Who was Samuel Courtauld? Today, every year, the Courtauld Gallery welcomes hundreds of thousands of visitors who come to admire a unique collection of masterpieces. The Courtauld Institute has become one of the most prestigious schools of the history of art in the world. But apart from the collection and the Centre for Study that bears his name, what do we really know about Samuel Courtauld? Although he was a visionary industrialist and collector, he remains relatively unknown. Samuel Courtauld didn't go to university, but went as an apprentice to Germany and France to learn about the textile business. And one assumes that it was specifically in France that he reconnected with the Huguenot heritage of the family, and at that point develops a deep and lasting affection for France and its history and its culture. He starts working for the company in a very modest position as an assistant to a manager in a local factory, and then gradually works his way up. And in 1921, he becomes chairman of the whole company until the year before he dies in 1947. That period coincides with its great sort of expansion, and this transforms the business from a very successful family-run business into a multinational textiles conglomerate.
We're here in Hume House, where Samuel Courtauld lived from 1926 to 1932. It was built by Robert Adams, which is the most important architect of the 18th century, for a very colorful character, the Countess of Hume, who wanted a house to throw very lavish and entertaining parties. And Samuel Courtauld continued that tradition. And this is where he hung all of his Impressionist paintings. And his friends often said that it was very strange to see Impressionism in the middle of all of these beautiful neoclassical decorations. On the ground floor were much more public and reception rooms. These had grander paintings. Upstairs were more private rooms, so like the music room. And so these had more personally significant works, and they were chosen especially by Samuel and Elizabeth.
Courtauld va visiter en 1917 une exposition d'art français qui présentait le legs de Sir Hugh Lane, qui comprenait des Renoir, des Manet et des Degas. Et ce sont ces tableaux qui vont avoir une influence déterminante sur la formation du goût du collectionneur. Et Courtauld, dans les années qui suivent immédiatement cette exposition, à partir de 1917, autour de 1920, commence à s'intéresser, à se concentrer particulièrement sur cette période de l'art, à fréquenter des expositions. Et ceci va provoquer chez lui un déclic. Donc il va commencer à assembler pour lui-même une collection de peintures impressionnistes et post-impressionnistes de toute première importance. Et au même moment, parce qu'il considère que ces tableaux ne sont pas suffisamment représentés sur les 6 messes des musées en Grande-Bretagne, il va procéder à un très généreux don d'une somme considérable, 50 000 livres, et il va constituer cette somme d'argent en trust, spécifiquement destinée pour l'acquisition de peintures impressionnistes et post-impressionnistes pour la nation britannique. Un des achats les plus importants qui a été effectué à partir du Courtauld Fund a sans nul doute été la baignade à Asnières de Seurat. Donc ce très très grand tableau de 2 mètres sur 3 a été acquis en 1924 et dès son acquisition, ce tableau a été tout de suite reconnu comme transformateur pour la représentation de l'impressionnisme, ici du néo-impressionnisme, sur les murs de la collection nationale.
Courtauld from 1923 for the next few years focused on buying for the Courtauld Fund. But then once the fund had been spent, that is really when his private collection took off. Elizabeth Courtauld often joked that she lived in a museum and that she had visitors coming daily to look at her paintings. But they were very, very proud of that, and they welcomed everyone. And they were constantly being asked to lend their paintings. But Samuel Courtauld said, I absolutely need a bar at the Folies Bergère here, because I will have a lot of concerts in my house and a lot of receptions, and I want my best works to be in the house.
It's really surprising, actually, given Samuel Courtauld's status and the contribution that he makes to taste in the UK, that we know so little about him and that so little survives. We know even less about his wife, Elizabeth. She was also a really strong character. She had her own interests, particularly in music, where she played a comparable role to his public support of the arts.
In 1931, Elizabeth passes away in Hume House. She died here. And he decides to leave Hume House and to actually give it to the newly founded Courtauld Institute of Art. And he also decides to give half of the collection to the Institute and take about half with him to his new apartment a few streets away. He was very engaged in trying to understand his emotions and his feelings towards art. And one of the ways that he analyzed these feelings was through poetry. For example, he did write 2 important poems on La Loge and Spring Chatou by Renoir. He loved early Renoir.
When summer, stirring from the dream of spring, with softer curves and deeper bloom awakes, her graceful banners, no mere covering, of silk and satin, lace and pearl she makes, to wave a wordless summons to her shrine. Now through the parted veils those altars shine, where life's eternal gems their fires renew. Now ruby glints reveal the brimming mine and pools of amethyst. Now azure veins glow through the ivory sheath which molds the liquid line. While 'neath the billowy robe and fleeting tone, we feel the warmth, strength, weight of flesh and blood and bone. Well, I knew Samuel Courtauld very well, despite the fact that I was only 13 when he died. He was my godfather, and he was a very close friend of my parents, and he played a big part in my early life. To me, he was the kindest man I've ever known. He used to give me, for my birthday and for Christmas presents, the most wonderful watercolors, the most wonderful aquarelle, which he painted himself, and they were full of humor and wit, and I absolutely adored them, and I'm very lucky to have them today. He was a great pioneer of what I call industrial democracy, that workers ought to have shares in the business, so they achieved a form of psychological ownership of the business as well.
For Courtauld, the collecting of art was really a central part of a vision he had for a just and humane society. He had a very clear vision for the role that art could play. He felt that the conditions of industrial capitalism, of consumerism and consumer culture had really degraded society. Courtauld founds the Courtauld Institute of Art in 1932 with a friend of his called Lord Lee of Fareham, Viscount Lee. Courtauld describes it himself as a missionary centre. He wanted this institution to teach the teachers, so they conceived of it as a very precise intervention in the art world. It was an agent for change, for the democratization of the arts. All of this really comes to the fore in the early 1940s when he publishes an article in an important journal edited by an economist called John Maynard Keynes. And that article is really a manifesto for the renewal of society after the Second World War. He is reflecting deeply on how this can be prevented in the future. And for him, what it means is the necessity of rebalancing society away from the material towards the spiritual. His buying of Impressionism and his desire to make those publicly available is part of that same project to rebalance society.